not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
Welcome back to Daybreak on Trust TV. Well, this is the newspaper review segment, and we will take a look at the front pages of the newspapers this morning. We'll start with the Daily Trust, which carries this major headline on the front page. 2023, Nigerians will vote competence over sentiments, says Shettima. And it has riders here. It says ex-Borno governor's choice, hard but best, says Tinubu. 11 governors attend unveiling of running mates, 11 others, Lawan, missing. God willing, you'll succeed, says Buhari. Protests at party headquarters over VP candidate's choice. That is the major headline on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper. And going down the page, cargoes trapped as dock workers shot Apapa Port Terminal. Details of that story on page 21. TUC seeks salary review, 65 years retirement age for workers. That's on page 54. And Super Falcons boycotting training over unpaid allowances. That is an interesting one on page 55 of the Daily Trust. On the bottom of the page there, bandits, terrorists kill 43, abduct many in Sokoto, Katsina, and Taraba. Riders here to say 7 siblings kidnapped in Katsina, the 2-year-old left behind after mother's kidnap. Right below the nameplate there, the bakers closed shop today over high costs of production. That is on page 22. Opponents of water bill driven by parochial political interest, says Minister. Details of that on page 3. And ASU strike, hundreds to miss law as NLS begins new session. Law school, as NLS begins new session. That is on page 47 of the Daily Trust newspaper. Well, these are the major headlines on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning.
Moving on to the Punch newspaper. The major headline here is staying with the ASU strike. NLC rejects Buhari's 2-week ultimatum, insists on protest. With riders there, NLC fought 2 weeks timeline, says 3 days enough to meet demands. Planned protest illegal. Nigerian Labour Congress partisan, says government. ASU says no going back on protest. Aviation workers planned strike. You would find there pictures of the unveiling of the vice presidential candidate of the APC, Senator Kashim Shettima. Anti-Shettima forces angry as Tinubu defends running mate. The details of that is on page 28. Reps probe lopsided TCN, that is the transmission company of Nigeria's recruitment, summons managing director, head of service. Protests as Lagos land grabbers burn houses, injure residents. Osun woman wanted for allegedly burning husband over infidelity. You find the details of that on page 4 and 5. And above the name marks, you have a belt. There blackout as grid collapses from 3,922 megawatts to 50 megawatts. CBN panel worries over Nigeria's debt repayment capacity. That's on page 25. EFCC, ICPC fought proposed ACGA amendment. You'll find that story on page 20. Reps plan tax crime commission headed by IG. The details of that is on page 25. Adeleke wins appeal, gets certificate of return. 4 men gang rape Lagos schoolgirl for 5 days. This is an ISO. The details of that on page 4 and 5. How Ebubeagu killed my 7 brothers in my presence. That's the story according to a survivor, and you'll find that on page 3. And these are the details of the stories on the front page. These are the summaries of the stories on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
All right, the next newspaper we're going to be looking at is the Guardian newspaper, which carries this major headline on its front page that reads, we'll look at the Blueprint newspaper at the moment. It carries this major headline on the front page. 2023, a must-win election, says Tinubu. And it has riders here. I'll hand over to you, says Buhari. That's on page 30. Our ticket, not sectional, not an imposition. Let's avoid sabotage. Other parties want what we want, says Adamu. Bishops, pastors defy Khan, attend unveiling. They hired mechanics, artisans, says Khan. Let's differentiate Body of Christ from political parties, says cleric, and protesters storm party secretariat, reject Shettima. Now, that's the major headline on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper. Oshun, 2 senior advocates of Nigeria, 48 others to challenge Adeleke's victory, and appeal court affirms governor-elect as PDP candidate. INEC issues certificate of return to Adeleke and deputy. Stories there on page 7 and 16. ASU, NLC's planned solidarity protest illegal. Invitation to anarchy, says the federal government. And Riders here says threat by aviation workers, security risk, says Sirika. Right to peaceful assembly, fundamental global right, says the NLC. Details of that story can be found on page 30. 10 police officers kidnapped in Kogi, that's on page 5. And again, national grid collapses. That is the story on page 22. NDDC, Umana, fumes over disappropriate recruitment and staff promotion. That is on page 7 of the Blueprint. These are the major headlines on the front page of the Blueprint newspaper.
And moving on to News Direct. The major story on the News Direct newspaper this morning, it's Buhari predicts Tinubu Shettima's victory. Says ticket repeats of 1993 winning formula. Adamu can disown bishops at Shettima's unveiling. You'll find the details of the story on page 23. We have conspicuous pictures here coming in from the conference hosted by Zenith Bank on non-oil export opportunities, having some of the gladiators in the Nigerian economy with the MD Bank of Industry, the immediate past MD Nigeria Export Promotion Council, the chairman Zenith Bank, Jim Ovia, the richest man in Africa, Aliko Dangote, the central bank governor, and of course the managing director of Zenith Bank there on that frame. We also have other images there at the unveiling of Shettima, as well as the receiving of certificates of return by the governor-elect of Osun State. And right above the name marks, grid collapse, fear grips manufacturers over 850 naira diesel per litre. Stakeholders identify non-oil export as critical success factor for Nigeria's economy, and Court of Appeal affirms Adeleke as PDP Guber candidate. The details of this story you'll find on page 22 and 23, respectively.
Well, the next newspaper we're looking at is the Sun newspaper, which carries this major headline on the front page. Presidential election must win for APC, says Tinubu. Officially presents Shettima as running mate, and supporters claim Oshungoba polls lost lessen to party members. ASU, federal government declares NLC's proposed solidarity protest illegal. And that carries these riders. It says aviation workers' threat to join strike, a security risk. Presidency denies giving Adamu 2 weeks to end strike, and Ngige refutes alleged Buhari's order to hand off negotiations. Blackout, anxiety as National Grid records 6th collapse. That story is on page 25, and Osun governor-elect deputy receives certificate of return. Appeal court affirms Adeleke's candidacy. Gunmen storm Varsity Hostel, abduct student in Cross River. That is on page 4. And kidnapped Edo APC stalwart Osun Baker regain freedom. Silver, others absent as reps begin fuel subsidy probe. That is on page 8 of the Sun newspaper. And customs impounds bales of acidic second-hand clothes. That is on page 26. Another headline on the front page of the Sun newspaper reads, Bishops at Shettima's unveiling, says can disowns bishops at Shettima's unveiling, says stand on same faith ticket, irreversible. That is on page 26. Now, these are the major headlines on the front page of the Sun newspaper.
And finally, we will be looking at the Guardian newspaper for this morning, and the major headlines is still with the unveiling of Shettima yesterday, and it reads, Buhari endorses party's Muslim ticket, confidence of 2023. You have pictures there of the unveiling and also that of the engagement on the non-oil exports by Zenith Bank. Above, just below the name marks, you have nationwide darkness as Nigeria's grid collapses 7th time in 2022. And right below, we have Don't Stoke Anarchy with planned solidarity protest. FG wants NLC Marburg virus, NCDC activate response team insists Nigeria at moderate risks. Inflation may hit 20% by December, expert warns. Your unveiling of NNPC, akin to rebranding graft, CNPP tells President Buhari. These are the major headlines we have for you this morning. We will take a short break. At this point, when we return, we would have our analysts in the house who would give you all the summary details as it concerns the major headlines on the papers this morning. Please stay with us.
The Nupes, to be precise, were coming to teach them Islam.
That made him to be popular within the Igbeze and the Suka in general.
We butcher horse meat here and we sell it here.
Every day, I be a good time. And then I be a good time. Steady.
They don't like to chop another meat.
It's a pleasure to have you join us again this morning on Daybreak on Trust Television. We now have in the studio the editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper, Malam Nasrullah, a regular guest in the house to provide us insight this morning. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning, sir.
Good morning, and it's good to be here.
Thank you very much. On all of the papers this morning, it appears the unveiling of Shetima is the major event this morning, with different kind of reactions. With Tinubu saying the choice was the hardest, but was the best. Buhari assuring them of victory. We've seen pockets of protest here and there over that choice. What is your evaluation of the unveiling yesterday? What do you make of that event yesterday?
Well, it's something that we have already had an idea that it will be coming, and it also showed the various interests, ahead of the 2023 election, which is already upon us, if you can see what the things that are happening. So my understanding of what happened yesterday was for the understanding that so many people are now making their arguments stronger, because the arguments are basically the same, the ones that have been started earlier. People saying it's not the right thing to do for a Muslim to run on the same ticket, and while others are saying no, it's something that we can do, because this is not about religion, this is about developing the country and things like that. So what I don't like is some of the language being used by both parties. You will have a chance by February 2023 to actually decide on what you want. So it wouldn't be good for you to be hitting the polity simply because you want people to understand or to agree with you on your own choice, because we are in a democracy. People have the right to make their own choices, and as long as they follow the rules, I don't see anything wrong with that. But to insist that simply because I'm seeing this as an opportunity for something to happen, that you must also see it that way. That's what I don't like.
Interesting.
Yeah, well, lots of arguments have actually been thrown about when it comes to this particular issue. A lot of people are actually saying is it really that important, or the amount of attention this particular issue is getting because of one political party's ticket, that it has taken over the entire discussion? We're not even talking about that there are other issues that we need to be looking at. There are other issues that we need to be talking about going into this general election. But we're focusing on one political party's ticket and making it the center of attraction. What do you say to things like this?
Well, like they say, the idea of the ruling elite is usually the ruling idea, because this is what the politicians are now talking about. It has somehow downplayed, or made irrelevant. So many things that we should be paying attention to. And politicians are basically doing it to win election. You know, those that are against the Muslim ticket, they see this as an opportunity to hammer on it so that they advance their own interest.
That's right.
Those who are fielding the Muslim ticket also see it as an opportunity for them to do the same thing. The problem is for people to go outside the law, you know, to be threatening that you have to do it this way, you don't have to do it this way, simply because they have an interest that they want to advance. That's the only problem that I will have.
Moving on to other issues as we have on the headline, I think, in my estimation, these days it's becoming a tradition to pick up the paper every day and you see 1, 2, 3 killed, bandits here, terrorists there, whatever nomenclature they go by. Yesterday, 43 were killed and so many others were adopted in Sokoto, Taraba, and Katsina. 7 siblings kidnapped in Katsina, for instance, and a 2-year-old left behind after a mother's kidnap. With all of these reporters, do you get a sense that the government understands the urgency of these things? Because even within the government circle, they seem to be more concerned about the mundane things than the amount. They don't even speak to it. What do you feel whenever you see this headline and you get some of those rather predictable responses from the government agencies?
Well, I think to start with, the government should actually worry about the legacy it's going to leave behind. Because I wouldn't want to say it has failed, but honestly, so far the approach has not been giving us confidence that it's actually serious in tackling these issues. Because these things keep repeating, keep happening over and over again. This is not the first time we'll be reading something like this. Especially in Sokoto, there was a time that we read about, I think, close to 50 or so.
Yes,
you
even
know,
during
killed,
the Hajj operations.
even during the Hajj operations, and so many things happening. And then nobody is punished. You know, there is nothing happening to show the people that the government is actually serious about ending all these killings. And that's where the problem is. Because one thing about Nigerians, you know, they respect or they appreciate effort. If they see the real effort, government putting effort to end this thing, honestly, they will appreciate it. But in the circumstance, nothing like that is happening, which is quite unfortunate.
Just a quick one before Ibrahim comes in. And this is where the government spokesperson seemed to put the media at an edge. They have alleged on several occasions that giving prominence to these things seemed to discourage the troops on the ground. We are caught between bringing these things to light, at least for record purposes, that human lives have been lost, rather than treat them with, I mean, these lives are brothers and sisters of ours, some way or the other. Is it wrong that the media keep highlighting these grave losses, these human lives, for instance, as a way of getting the government to sit up?
It's actually a responsibility that the media is expected to play. Even the Constitution, you know, gave the media that responsibility. So it's not about the government being happy about what the media is reporting or what the media is not reporting. Because I have never seen a situation where the government came out to commend the media, you know, for doing things that maybe it finds appealing to it or something like that. But to say that the media should not report it, honestly, that era has gone. You know, the media, as it is now, lacks the what do you call it? The opportunity to kill stories, because the people know that these things are happening.
True.
So when you don't report them, the first thing that will come to the mind of the people is the fact that maybe you have compromised. You know, you are not doing the right thing, and once you lose your credibility as a media organization, then you're out of business, because nobody will want to come to your platform to even see what you are reporting, because they will think, what can you be telling us when things are happening, you've not been able to report them? Is it only the good things that the government is doing that the people should be reading about?
All right, let's move away slightly from that and talk about another burning issue when it comes to Nigeria: power. Power has been a perennial problem in Nigeria. We all know that, and every Nigerian knows that. Yesterday, I was speaking to somebody that was actually shouting the mantra, "Bring back our NEPA," because he believes that we were better off when we had NEPA than what we are actually having now. Grid collapses, like how many times now within this year alone, and there's no end in sight to it. Businesses are folding up, diesel is through the roof, and all that, and still we are still battling with this power issue. What is your take on that?
The power problem, actually, like you said, so many businesses are folding, and going by what I think the Guardian reported, it happened 7 times this year, which if you look at it on the average, that's once every month, because we're in the 7th month. My problem is the government has not been able to address the issue in a way that the people will see that, okay, it's actually serious about ending this thing, because as it is now, so many businesses cannot continue. Prices are going through the roof because of power problem, and somehow the argument that the government is advancing all the time is the fact that maybe when these power facilities and platforms were given out, the agreement that was entered into, so many people think maybe the government did not play its expected role at the time, that we are now finding it difficult to even get the players to do the right thing. Because I remember at a point, one of the electricity distribution companies will just tell the government that because of insecurity in the area of we operate, maybe you have to give us certain amounts so that we will be able to remain in business. So if you look at that, if the players cannot actually do it, then the government should be bold enough. It shouldn't be about those who are behind them, because people are saying there are quite powerful individuals behind all these electricity distribution companies. The government has a responsibility and it should play it. So if the people, if those that are controlling the electricity distribution companies at the moment cannot do it, then the government should be able to find a way of kicking them out, so that in the end we will have better and maybe improvement in the power sector.
Painfully, sometimes you want to discuss negative and positive things side by side, but you find that very difficult. Again, staying with something else that is of major concern to Nigerians will be issues around ASUU. We were talking about 7 months of collapse. This time is also 6 or 7 months of what's being at home as a result of the never-ending ASUU strike. I will share a very important details with you of a material I received yesterday while we prepare for this morning's engagement. There was an analysis of the so-called ASUU strike between 1999 and today. Between 1999 and 2007, that is under the PDP era, we had a total of 18 months of strike. 2008 to 2015, we had another 16 months of strike. 2015 to 2022, we have had 29 months and counting. In all, we have had 63 months of ASUU strike, which boils down to about 15 semesters, about 7 years lost of a total of 20. That's an entire academic cycle of, start to finish for some graduates, especially even in a 7-year course, not to talk of even a 4-year course. Looking at the way we have behaved, with something sensitive as the ASUU strike, and the fact that the government, body language doesn't suggest one of seriousness. I mean, it's about giving ultimatum without necessarily discussing the issues that underpin this consistent strike. How would you generally describe how we have behaved with something that should be the most important sector in our national life?
Well, you can see even the ultimatum that the media is reporting, the presidency is already disowning that. And you can see they are also, I wouldn't say afraid, but they are not happy that the NLC is now trying to enter into it, because maybe that's when maybe the thing will get an impetus that the government will show the government as not doing what it's supposed to do. But so many people will say that even the NLC itself, this is something that it should have done earlier. But probably because even among the leadership of the NLC, I don't think you still have many of them, you know, sending their kids, their children to public institutions. So if your own kids are not affected, maybe you wouldn't see the picture, the urgency of actually tackling all these issues. And to say that we have lost 6 to 3 months, what on earth are we doing? And you know how our employment sector works. You know, they will say, no, we want graduates that are below 25. So for no fault of yours, you know, or for something that you can actually blame on the government, you know, you are now being sidelined. So many people, they are not like in business because they don't have the capacity to start a business. And then you don't allow them to even go to school to acquire the education that they will need so that they remain at least, you know, good citizens that you will be proud of. So where do we want to go to? That's maybe one question that we should be asking. If the government is serious about ending the ASU strike, then it shouldn't worry about what the NLC is trying to do. If you have a timeline, work on that timeline. But as it appears, there is no timeline. You know, like I said, how can all the newspapers report something only for the presidency to come and disown it? That means it's either the media did not understand what the government is saying, and I find that very difficult to happen because the entire, virtually all the media in Nigeria, you know, coming together to report something in exact, you know, so maybe the government had an afterthought, you know, to say, okay, maybe we shouldn't call it an ultimatum because we know within these 2 weeks it will be impossible for us to make any headway. So Nigerians should maybe keep praying. And we should also find a way, I know people have been saying this over and over again, we should find a way of making sure that all those who are, you know, in leadership positions in this country, you know, we should make a law that their words, their kids have to be in public institutions. Maybe that way, maybe we'll begin to see some changes.
Well, that is quite interesting. I was speaking to a group of students yesterday, and the general belief among the student body right now is that they have actually zeroed their minds that they are not going back to school until after the election. If this happens, what is the potential danger of having so many restive youth at home idling from now until the election period? What does that portend during the election to have that many restive youth?
It means you are only giving the politicians the tools to recruit their talks, you know, and because, like I said, people don't have these students don't have the capacity to start businesses. You know, they are not in school. So whoever comes with some pittance, you will see them, you know, dancing to their tunes, because what more do you expect them to do? It's just quite unfortunate that in Nigeria we have not been able to make most of what we have. Like, see what is happening in Russia, for instance. Russia is under so many sanctions, you know, left, right, and center. But if you look at what is happening now, they have been able to at least navigate some of these sanctions. They are still getting money from oil business. They are also, their agricultural sector is also booming. But in the case of Nigeria, the agriculture is virtually dead. People cannot go to the farm. Like the bandits and terrorists story we just read not long ago. Farmers are mostly affected by all these things. So which means we have not been able to secure the food supply in the country, and then we are not even getting anything from the fuel that we are blessed with. So all these things come together to tell you that the students are just out there waiting for whoever has the money to use them negatively, which is quite unfortunate.
Painfully, it does appear that as a country, we don't seem to learn even from our own history, not just the history of the world. The NSAS is barely 2 years old, and some of the reports that came out from that was that those who were available for those events were students that were out of school. We don't seem to have learned any lessons at all. And what still, perhaps you may have to speak to that, is the statement that seemed to be emanating from the president himself, from within the Salah period all through until he returned to the villa. Everywhere he showed up, in Kaduna, in Daura, he seemed to be saying something that is a complete disconnect from the reality, from either telling us that we should be lucky we are not suffering enough like other African countries, to telling us that they've stabilized agriculture to the extent that we are now exporting foods, even though prices keep getting worse in the market. Is it that the president... Now, where do we even put this blame? Is it that the president's men don't seem to be telling him the truth, or that there is a blatant disregard for the real situation and it's just a question of, well, they can believe what they believe, let me tell them what I care? Where do you even situate those body language?
Actually, like you said, I also believe there is some disconnect, between what the president is saying and then the reality on the ground. If you are saying Nigerians should be happy that we are not suffering the way our neighbors are suffering, we can also make the same argument that we are not enjoying the same way other countries are enjoying.
True.
So, it can go both ways. And I want to believe that the president actually has access to all
the intelligent
reports and what have you. But, you can choose what you want to believe. And because maybe you have spent considerably in the agricultural sector, and then you take it as given that sector has to just perform, and it doesn't happen that way, because you need checks, because if you allow officials to just do as they like, then that's like an opportunity for them to embezzle, to misappropriate, to do all sorts of things. And unfortunately, that's what is happening. There will be attack on correctional facility today. Nobody will be punished. And then there are so many people that are saying we have not been able to benefit from the CBN Anko Borrower thing. But the money
has been pumped
out. So if we are doing all that, I think even at least the complaints will not be as high as they seem to be.
Interesting developments there, insights and perspective from the editor-in-chief of Dateline newspaper, Madeline Nasrullah, who has been our guest this morning, drilling deep into some of the issues of concerns as captured by the daily newspaper. It's a pleasure to have you join us this morning, and we look forward to having you back in the studio soon. This is where we draw the curtain for the newspaper review this morning. We will take a short breather. When we return, the show continues. Please.
Not necessarily tribal or regional.